Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. As you know, ScotlandIS is the membership and cluster management organisation for the digital tech sector in Scotland. And we have been working flat out for the past week to pull together a webinar programme that will hopefully help you and your businesses throughout this current situation that we're all finding ourselves in. Morning, Gillian, nice to see you. We have today Ruth McKay, who is the owner and director of Uniq Marketing. Ruth owns a small business, like many of you will, and is also facing a lot of the challenges that you're facing. So she's going to share with you some of the practical strategies that you can put in place to market your business throughout this period, and also come up with hopefully some solutions to how you carry on networking and meeting with people over the next however many weeks this turns into. We do also have Billy Partridge from Grayling who will be joining us. Billy is the head of the northern regions in Scotland for Grayling. Unfortunately, he has been called away to do some crisis comms, as is his job, unfortunately. So he hopes to join us. He's still hoping to get on here for 2:45, 10:02. If not, he has sent me his notes and his presentation, which I will forward on to all of you afterwards. And if you have any questions on it, please feel free to come back to me and I can hook you up with Billy. I don't think, is there much else I have to tell you before we begin? Oh, yes. So we have a Q&A function. I would encourage you to use it throughout. Submit anything that you want to ask to Ruth or Billy, and we will get to it at the end. There is also the option to raise your hand. This will allow you to speak and, chat and converse with us. We will allow you to do this, but again, it will be at the end of the session. So just, keep your questions coming in and we will get round all of them. So without further ado, I will shut up and I will pass you over to Ruth. Ruth.
Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Welcome to my back bedroom, my guest room. So I've got a lot of things to share with you today, but I thought I would kick off by just saying that right now it probably feels like the entire world has been turned upside down. There are an awful lot of challenges that many of us face. A lot of unknowns as well, which is obviously really difficult in business, particularly when you're planning business or marketing, and essentially the whole landscape has changed for all of us. However, today I have lots of answers, solutions, and strategies to share with you. And what I would say is that there are a lot of opportunities out there. It's just that we're all having to change and adapt and to find those opportunities. So I'm just going to share my screen because I've got a couple of slides to share with you. Okay, let me pop into presentation mode. Okay, so today what I'm talking about is how do we now market our businesses in the current climate? Let me just start by talking about a few things that will have changed for a lot of us. The first one is basically any business or marketing plan we came into this quarter or 2020 with has probably gone out of the window now, because none of us were expecting to be in a lockdown situation or be facing this kind of challenge. I think one of the big game changers for a lot of us has been that we can no longer rely on face-to-face meetings, networking, and events. So it's a question of, so what do we do now if we don't have those available to us? And a lot of us rely on those networks for generating business and for support. But what do we do now? I think another big thing that's changed is obviously the way that we're all working and communicating. I wouldn't ordinarily be presenting from my back bedroom. So that's another big change that we're facing. I think how we feel, think, and behave, and this is very significant in thinking about your marketing, your content marketing, and what you're going to do with your business going forward. Because right now we're at a time where things are quite sensitive. People have a lot of worries, anxieties about the future, their jobs, health, their family. So it's a really sensitive time. So one of the things that we need to consider is how do we take that into account when we're communicating or putting out content. On the subject of content, one of the things that we've seen a dramatic increase in is the way people are consuming content online. We normally see this kind of peak between Christmas and New Year when lots of people are bored and sat around at home in their pajamas. But now that there are so many of us having to work from home and stay at home, people are consuming a huge amount of content, and they're looking for answers and information. So that's a real opportunity for a lot of businesses, and a way of us helping and supporting each other as well. And finally, how and what we buy is also changing as well. And that's something, again, that will impact on a lot of businesses that we'll want to take into account. So that's some of the changes that have happened and have taken place as a result. I thought what I wanted to talk about before I get into the marketing strategy piece was actually, for a lot of us right now, we're having to go right back to the drawing board and think about what is our new strategy, what is our new plan going to be. And I put together a few points, and this is a strategy that we've used ourselves in our business that we're now rolling out and implementing. I think the first one is get focused on retaining your current clients and customers. I think your first port of call should be talking to your clients and customers and finding out from them what has changed for them. What impact has this had on their business? How has it changed their customers? Maybe their offering is going to have to change. But one thing we can say for sure is there will be change happening, and what you need to do is understand what is that change for your clients and customers. The next thing to think about then is what new challenges have been presented. And I don't just mean things like, well, they're having to work from home, but what other new challenges have happened in terms of how their customers are buying or communicating with them, or if in fact their customers can continue to buy from them. So spend some time having those conversations and asking specifically, what are the new challenges they're facing? What do they need support and help with? And is there any potential opportunities that actually maybe weren't on your radar before this happened, but actually now there's maybe new opportunities there for them for the way that they can help and support their customers and clients? When you get that picture and that understanding, then you can start to figure out, well, what is it that you could offer and how can you support them? I think one of the most common mistakes it's really easy to make is that we dash out there and we want to come up with a solution, we want to give people answers now, and we kind of rush in with an offering or an idea without actually taking the time to understand what's happening in their business and what help and support they feel that they need. So I would really encourage you to take the time to do that and then have a think about what's your new offering. Is there a new service or product there that you can offer somebody that would help them out? And then once you have that answer, you can roll that out across your marketing. So not just for your current clients, but you might find that there's a whole new audience of potential clients who previous to this maybe didn't have a need for your product or service, but do now as a consequence of this happening. So hopefully that'll help you in just thinking about formulating your new strategy going forwards. So the next thing I wanted to share with you was 2 lead generation strategies that I have promised absolutely do work, and I stand by that. And what's really interesting is I wrote this presentation about 6 weeks ago. So before any of this had really kicked off like this, but both of these lead generation strategies are actually strategies that you can take online. And there are ways that you can market your business, develop your network and your relationships online. And 6 weeks ago, I was talking about this, and from a perspective of, even if you're networking, going to events, how can you take that up a level? How can you take that online, and how do you scale it up? So the first strategy is advertising to customers who want to buy your product, which sounds fairly straightforward and easy given that they want to buy your product. But the example I've used, this is Andy, and he is looking for an architect. So Andy hops onto Google, Google's architects, and starts looking through the adverts. He clicks on an advert, and that advert takes him, in this case, to one of our clients, Mill Architects, and this is their landing page. And on the landing page, it gives you more information about them as a practice. It gives you information about the services that they offer. But one of the key things on the landing page is that you have an opportunity to book a 15-minute call to speak to the architect, get some advice, get a ballpark figure, and find out more about your project. And the great thing about landing pages, which I'm sure many of you who are in marketing will know, is that it's designed to a specific formula that captures people in that moment. So you're not browsing through a website and getting lost, but the landing page is there specifically to capture them, give them one call to action, and a really clear next step that person can take. Now, a different example, so we quite often, well, before this, we were out running events once a month, which we're now doing online, but we would advertise our event. In this case, it was my 2 lead generation strategies about 4 to 6 weeks ago, and somebody's on Facebook, going through their Facebook feeds, they see our event information and think, actually, that sounds like something I'd be interested in. Again, click on the advert, go through to the landing page or the booking page in this case, and they can book to come along to the event. And this is actually showing you it's a really quick and simple, easy process. But the key point is that you're marketing a product, a service, event that somebody is either proactively looking for on Google or is on Facebook and happens to come across. And hopefully if you get it right and all of those steps are right, those people then get in touch or sign up. And assuming that all goes well, this is what I call our lead generation dance. So this is when you've got a new contact, somebody signed up. Sadly, at the moment, we'll all be doing that dance in our bedrooms. But that first strategy is quite straightforward, and essentially it's based on if you can get leads from Google or Facebook or advertising on another social media platform, then that is a great lead generation tool. And all you need for that is a well-produced advert. You need to have the right keywords or target audience, a powerful landing page, the right call to action, and then you just want to keep in touch with them through your remarketing. So that's strategy 1. That's quite neat, straightforward, and simple. Strategy 2, okay, so I think this will be relevant to an awful lot of you with us today, and this is particularly relevant if you're selling a product or a service to another business, so if you're in the B2B marketplace. But essentially, at the heart of this strategy is that marketing is about educating your audience to create that need or desire. So your audience isn't online on Google, Facebook, or any of these platforms looking for your product or service. And the question is, how do you target those people? And how do you draw them in and educate them so that you're creating that need and desire? So the challenge here is very much, as I say, that these people are not looking right now for your service. Excuse me 1 second. They're not proactively looking for it, they're not asking people for it, and the question is, how do you reach those people? How do you get them to click and engage with you? So the solution to that is, what's really key is visibility, okay? Visibility, and that has never been more true than it is right now. It's about content, it's about keeping in touch with people, and it's about educating them. It's also about helping them realize the challenge that they have and how you can help them. And as I say, it's quite fascinating having presented this 6 weeks ago and just how much more relevant this has all become, because without your networking and your face-to-face events, how do you keep your visibility? Because you don't want to put your brand and your business into lockdown for the next 3 weeks, 3 months, whatever it might be. So how do you keep in touch with people, and how do you continue to build your network? The first starting place with that is your database, okay? And if you have a database, fantastic, 10 out of 10, but it's worth going back with fresh eyes and just having a look at how up to date is your database? have you categorized contacts in there so that when you are emailing people or putting out posts or getting in touch with them, you're sending information to them that's absolutely relevant to them. So you also need in your database to be able to capture potential leads or people who are interested, who are consuming your content and who have made contact with you. And because in this scenario, we're not talking about a click and buy purchase, you need to be able to nurture those relationships. And so your database is really your map of where that person sits in their relationship with you. So we've got some people, which if you can see in my slide there, who are just prospects, people I've met, spoken to somewhere along the line, right through to people who have asked for a proposal or asked for a quote. So it takes them right through the whole spectrum of the relationship. So your database is your gold mine, and never more so than it is now. If you don't have a database in place and you're not capturing the contacts, your network there, then you will be losing return on your investment from your marketing, because inevitably people will fall through the cracks. None of us are able to hold all of that in our heads. But I'll talk a little bit more about databases later on, but that's your first starting point there. Next one is all about content. And I know a lot of you will be producing content and produce fantastic content. But I think really key with content, and particularly now, is that we need to have a strategy and a message behind our content. I'm going to talk a little bit more about how that will have changed now, given the current situation. But having a strategy, and I think the key word I would use here is purpose. It's really easy, particularly if you've maybe got quite a few hours now to fill in your day, to just be producing content, blogs, social media posts, and banging things out there. But it has to have a purpose and a point to it, because otherwise it just doesn't engage with people, it doesn't resonate, and it won't make any difference, quite honestly, to your marketing. One of the pieces I would suggest with your content that you want to consider is that people are now more than ever looking for information and answers. But even before this whole present situation happened, what people were really looking for is they want to be able to make an informed and educated decision before they get in touch with you. Okay, so pre-internet, I would have had no option if I wanted to find out more about your product than getting in touch with you. But now I've got all this information on the internet that I can go away and research. So as part of your content strategy, you need to think about what content you have on your website, that you have in social media, that you're blogging about, that helps somebody come to that decision that actually, I recognize that I've got a challenge, a problem here that I need help with, and here are my options, and this is how this company or particular person can help us. One of the most effective forms, and we're going to be relying possibly even more on this, is email marketing. It's still one of the most popular forms of marketing. And despite the fact we all get hundreds of emails every single day, probably more than we did before, email marketing is still very powerful and very effective. And the key purpose behind your email marketing just now is keeping in touch with people. Okay, so as I say, without us being able to go to meetings with customers and clients, we have to have a way of keeping in touch. And I think that my experience just now is that people are really keen to keep in touch, not just by email, but phone as well. But the key thing here is you don't want to be lost or go off people's radars. So it's really important that you keep in touch with people and that what you're sending is relevant to them as well. So let me just run through. There's 3 types of email marketing that we use in different contexts. So this first one here will be very familiar to all of us. This is your standard promotional email. It's your MailChimp email. It's got lovely images and things in it. It works really, really well for events, but in my experience, I would encourage you to maybe move away from this style of emailing if you're emailing clients or you're putting out an email to your network, okay? I would use this specifically if you have something to promote, whether that's an event or a product or something like that, because most of us recognize as soon as you've clicked in, we know it's from MailChimp, we can see the images and we think, right, that's somebody selling to me, so a lot of people will just delete your email. My favorite one is the second email type, and we've called it the personal email, but essentially it's a plain text email. So I don't mean that you're sending individual emails to people, but you have one email, it's plain text, it has to be very well written so it feels quite personalized, it has to be very relevant and resonate with the people that you're sending it to. But this plain text email has a fantastic open rate and response. My experience was of this has been that when we've sent out plain text emails, that I've heard from people who've actually replied who I've not spoken to in over 10 years, suddenly started replying, whereas before they deleted every email that I sent them. Interestingly, I think Heather received one of our emails and actually assumed, quite rightly, it was from me. And in fact, it had been another member of my team had written that email. But again, because of the style and nature of it, Heather was on the phone to me, we had a conversation about it, and it worked and it got that engagement because it's plain text and it was written in a specific way. So I would encourage you to maybe consider moving to that form of email. My third form of email is nurture emails, and I know some of you will have come across nurture emails. But a nurture email is a sequence of emails designed with a specific purpose. So to give you an example, let's say you've got an e-guide on your website and somebody downloads the e-guide. What you would really want is 4 to 6 nurture emails that essentially take them from the point where they've downloaded the guide, small steps all the way through to that next point of action, which might be book a 15-minute call with me or get in touch and tell me more about your business. But those nurture emails are very much designed to take you from point A, where they've downloaded the guide, drip feed information to them so they feel comfortable to take that next step. So moving on, social media is all about the visibility. And I know I keep saying this, but it's true. This has got even greater importance than it did beforehand. And this is all about communicating your message, staying in touch with people, but your message has to be consistent and make sense. Now that might sound like a ridiculously obvious thing to say, but the truth is a lot of us, myself included at times, you have this scattergun approach and we're just firing things out left, right and centre. And I sometimes think that in situations like this, that's even more tempting because we want to stay in touch, we want to post things, we want to say things, but maybe we haven't had the time to put that thought or strategy behind it. So I would say share really valuable information with people that will actually help your audience. What can you share with them that will benefit and contribute to what they're trying to achieve? There are kind of two camps of social media or two pitfalls, if you like, that we tend to find companies fall into. One is that you're putting out loads of good social media and content, and it's all very nice, but it doesn't actually really deliver much in the way of engaging people or generating inquiries or starting those conversations. Or we have companies who are just very salesy in their social media, and it's all buy now or book an appointment with me. So really you want to have a mix and flow of the two. So there needs to be calls to action in some of those, but sometimes you just want to share really good content. But essentially, what I would say about social media is that it's an opportunity to nurture relationships, but also to comment and interact with other people. So it's not just about us posting up information, but it's actually how do we interact with our community. Moving on to your website. So what I'm going to say about your website, the main point with this is to be really clear that you have all the information necessary on your website for somebody to make a buying decision. And I'll give you an example because somebody just made this point to me, and we've subsequently updated our website. So we had a list of services, which was fine, and we'd had certain packages with those services, but somebody else, it was actually another marketing person, made the point to me, said, I can see the package of services, but do you guys actually do PPC? Do you guys offer Facebook advertising? Do you do content marketing? And I was like, well, yes. And he said, honestly, it wasn't that clear on your website about the specific services that you offered. Fine. One of the other big barriers was around pricing. So having spoken to a lot of businesses, I know a real challenge about coming to talk to an agency or a marketing person is that there's this assumption that you're going to be phenomenally expensive. So we have actually put starting prices and package prices on our website because I might as well remove that barrier and give people that information anyway. So maybe just with fresh eyes, while you've maybe got time just now, go back through your website and really, or maybe go and ask somebody else to look at your website and ask yourself, is this all the information that somebody would need to make a buying decision and take that next step to actually making contact with you? So this is the magic piece, if you like, to this particular strategy. And the key with this is, and this whole strategy kind of hangs around this, is if you're producing content, whether that's blogs or guides or videos, is actually to put some money behind that, okay? So you're actually advertising your content, not necessarily your business, but if you write a fantastic guide, they're really, really popular, put some money behind that, because what that does is, let me take LinkedIn as an example, it will help get that content beyond your immediate network of people, and it's going to take a whole new wider audience, okay? It's not expensive to do, and it'll just drive more traffic to that content and then more traffic to your website. It's really powerful. We did a campaign over Christmas, and we had 2 or 3 new downloads every single day, and that's just helping build and grow my network. It's more people to talk to. And then what I did was, those people who downloaded the guide, I connected with on LinkedIn or other social media platforms. So again, we're just growing our audience. So that one's really, really important, looking at how you put advertising behind your content. So quick summary of how this second strategy works, because it's not just quite as clean and straightforward as the first one. What you need here, essentially at the heart of this, is content. And what I'm sharing with you on the screen here is a content process that we use. And the idea is you spend all that time and energy writing a blog. You want to maximize your value from that. And the way to do that is have a process and a system in place. So for example, when I produce a piece of content, whether it's a blog or a guide, we do email promotion behind that. I'll do a LinkedIn video promoting it. We'll do social media. SEO, that's another really good tool, is actually putting SEO on your content, and then we'll put some paid advertising behind that, and that's a way of really maximizing your value from your content. We are HubSpot partners, so hence the fact HubSpot is, and not only partners, but a massive fan of HubSpot. It's a fantastic system, and not that I'm here to market of that, but what I wanted to touch on with HubSpot is some of the little magic pieces that are really, really important in your content marketing. So I'll just very quickly say that I know, having spoken to a lot of marketing people, that one of the challenges is that you're having to convince your colleagues, your boss, that all this time and investment spent on producing content is valuable, and it's actually directly impacting positively on your sales. The key to that, because a lot of business owners, I call it the ugly truth of content marketing, a lot of them really question deep down if it really is worthwhile time spent or money spent doing it. And the answer is it absolutely is, but you have to be able to track and measure your results from your content marketing. And HubSpot is one system that will enable you to see who's been to your website, who is opening your emails, It'll allow you to see which guides or blogs that they're reading, and essentially it allows you to track and measure who is basically consuming your content. That for me then removes this whole angst that we can sometimes have if I'm sat here, 6, 8, 10 hours a day producing all this content. Is anybody actually reading it? Is it of any value or use? And HubSpot has a way of allowing you to track right down to that individual person who is consuming your content. And then those people are I guess those are the people that you want to start engaging with. So if you've got a list, say, of 20, 50 people who've downloaded your guide, have been visiting your website, they open your emails, that's a good warm conversation and starting point I would suggest for you to then focus your attention on. So I tend to then connect with those people online. I'll send them personal emails from me, just trying to engage and start that conversation. And this is just a slide that shows you essentially what you can get in HubSpot is you can see the person. It gives you their whole history and relationship with you, your brand, if they've spoken to you, if they've been on the website, and it is a fantastic tool. So the result of that is that you'll be able to see how engaged your prospects are. You'll be able to see which promotional emails they have opened. You'll be able to see what topics and information that they're looking for. You'll also be able to track your website visits, and you'll also be able to phone them as and when they open their emails. One of the cool features is if I send out an email to somebody, I can actually see in real time when they open that email. And if I'm available, I can then pick up the phone and say, I see that I just wanted to check you got my email and get some feedback from you. And because they're looking at it that it's relevant. That's a good time to speak to them, as opposed to the many back and forth phone calls that then happen. And essentially the whole purpose of this is by marketing and sharing your content and by tracking it, you start with a much easier conversation with people, because you got a much better idea of the fact they're genuinely interested, they're honestly engaged, and it's something that's obviously on their mind just now, and that's a much easier starting place than cold calling somebody, for example. I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes talking about content and how to market and what content you should be producing just now, given this current situation that we're in. This is a new piece to this particular presentation, but I've had so many conversations with marketing people, with business owners saying, I want to say something and I want to be putting out content, but I'm not sure how to approach the whole subject now. Let me start with a quick rant. The COVID-19 emails have become to me the GDPR emails that we will all fondly remember, when we got just hundreds of emails. And I know that it had to be done, there was legislation behind it, that honestly, we're inundated now with COVID-19 emails and other companies' procedures with that. What I would say to you is, there's a genuine purpose and reason to contact people, your customers, your clients, your network, fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But what I'm talking about is sending emails saying, this is our procedure as an office as to how we're going to manage this. Well, that doesn't make any difference to me at all. It's not relevant to me because I didn't work in your office. I had a car financing company, who I won't name, who sent me an email saying, this is our policy, this is how we're approaching COVID-19, and here's a hand washing guide. I don't assume that they're hand washing experts, and my point is, it's just irrelevant. The only email we sent out with regards to this was to our clients to say, our office is now closed, we're working remotely, here's how you can contact us, we will be in touch, because it was relevant to them. So just make sure it's relevant and there's a point to it. The second part to this is tone and style. I'm actually going to do another webinar with a deeper dive into this, because I think this is like a whole thing in itself. Because this is a really sensitive time, your tone and style of your communications and your content just now has to change, okay? It needs to be empathetic. You need to think about how you can be coming across as being supportive. I've put in the word safe, and not because you need to say stay safe, but it's just the kind of language that we're hearing people using now. And things like, take care, it has to feel personal, and it has to have this sense of, we're all in this together and we're all here to support and help each other. So it's that kind of style and feeling, if you like, has really come to the forefront of content marketing. A couple of things to avoid. Firstly, pretending this isn't happening is not a thing. I've seen less of this now on LinkedIn, but I think last week and certainly the week before, while I appreciate it was a different situation, there was still this air of some companies pretending this isn't happening. We're not going to talk about COVID-19. We're not going to talk about lockdown. Let's just pretend it isn't happening. It's not going to work. It is happening. We're all experiencing it and we've all been impacted. So we have to address it. I would avoid talking about investment just now, because at the moment, that's not where people's heads are at. We're not thinking about investment in the future, because that's an unknown. There's too many things changing right now for us to really be able to think about that. So I wouldn't bother using that kind of language. Another pet bugbear of mine is sharing government information without content, or information from organisations. You say, oh, here's the latest update on X. That's fine if you have a purpose and a comment and something to add to that adds value to the story. Otherwise, don't bother, because you can rightly assume that I'll probably have got that information from somewhere else. At the moment, one thing to avoid would be, I think, coming across as too salesy. And I think a lot of companies that I've spoken to are concerned that they don't want to be seen as mercenary or trying to take advantage of the situation, which is important. But it doesn't mean that you shouldn't say anything, okay? You should absolutely be communicating and putting out content, but you, again, just need to look at that approach and it not coming across as salesy, but more supportive. Finally, another pet hate of mine is sending content or wasting people's time. And that can be in an online meeting that doesn't have enough direction, purpose, or structure, ends up probably not being that value and wasting time. While I appreciate that many of us, or it would be easy to think that we're all kicking about our houses, desperately looking for something, a meeting to join or an email to read. But actually, I think for an awful lot of us, that absolutely isn't true. We're trying to get a plan strategy together. We're trying to work out what our new direction is. So our time is still very precious. Our time and attention is, because it's also consumed a lot right now with other events around us. So avoid wasting people's time. Here's a couple of do's for you. Absolutely every single thing, whether it's a tweet, a blog, whatever it is, a phone call, it has to have a purpose and a point. If you're going to have a webinar, if you're going to do an online meeting, there has to be structure, purpose, and point for that, and more so because it's not the same thing as obviously having a conversation in person. Everything you offer has to add value, okay? What people are looking for are answers and solutions, or ideas and information. So all of that people will appreciate, but it has to add value and it has to be relevant as well. Again, I think it's a trap that we can fall into, which is to send out information for the sake of sending information. But it has to be relevant and really resonate with people. Give answers and information where you can. I appreciate there's a lot of things we don't know right now. Speaking to a lot of HR companies and the like, we just don't have all of the answers because the government don't have the answers. Fine. But at least, share your expertise, your knowledge, your background and experience. Do offer people solutions. Do share your knowledge and expertise, because this is going to be a key way how we all help each other get through this and out the other side. And remember to put it in context. So again, don't ignore what's happening, but just think about the context and how that's changed, and make sure that you include that as well. Have I got time, Heather, for a 2-minute quick rundown on how to develop relationships online? Just 2. Okay, right. Sorry, speaking as fast as I can, hopefully capturing all this. In terms of maintaining relationships online, so we can't meet up now, we're not going to networking events, fine. How do we do that online? And this is a great strategy for, once we get through this, to really elevate your network and your audience. I was absolutely encourage you to get more proactive and connect with more people on LinkedIn. Okay, I tend to focus on connecting with people who have got a reason and a purpose to connect with. So, you know, if it's people in a webinar or somebody we've been to the same event or something like that online, I may add, then it's about proactively making sure that you're constantly connecting with people. Go back and look at your database and find other people that you can also connect with online, whether it's LinkedIn or whichever platform is best for your business. Just go back to your contacts and check, have you actually connected with everyone that you could? When you do connect with people, and again, I'm thinking of LinkedIn maybe being the most relevant platform for a lot of you, add that personal message. So I actually connected with Billy, who very thankfully accepted my connection on LinkedIn before this. But the point was, I explained who I was, why I was connecting, and what the connection was, because I think that's really important as well. In order to build, yeah, it just puts it into context for people. So do add that personal note with a reason and context. Keep sharing great content. I can't say that enough. It's good. Content marketing is going to take on a whole new life form now, given the situation we're in. But we have a huge audience of people out there who are really looking for information and help. So it's a great opportunity. Finally, interact and comment. Again, it's really easy to get focused on what we're sharing, what we're doing, our message, and what we want to get across to people. But the real trick to developing that relationship with people and that community is interacting and commenting on other people's content. So if somebody else has posted a guide or a blog, try to come up with something that contributes to that discussion, that adds value, and you will genuinely stand out and be noticed, because for a lot of us, we get very excited when anybody has liked, shared, or done anything, any interaction with us online. So it's a really good way of starting a relationship and starting a conversation. And I will just leave you with to say that there are honestly opportunities out there. We've all been a bit blindsided with what's happened and the speed of which it's all happened. But it's a case of taking a breath, taking a moment and thinking about, right, what new opportunities are out there? How can I help more people? And where can I add my support and value to the community? I'm done, but thank you very much. I look forward to your questions after.
I will stop sharing your screen for you, Ruth. There we go.
Thank you very much.
So thank you very much for that, Ruth. We will now, I'm glad to say, go to Billy, because he has managed to join us this morning. He has finished his client work and is very much looking forward to talk to all of you. Billy works for Grayling. Grayling are our PR agents. We use them and they've been doing some fantastic work for us over the last 10 days, definitely, and year or so before that as well. So without further ado, Billy, if you would like to go ahead and introduce yourself and tell everybody about how we actually share our message.
Thanks, Heather. I hope you can hear me okay. And thanks for the plug. That was unnecessary. Yeah, so I'm delighted to be here. I'm sorry I didn't join right at the very start. And Ruth, if I repeat anything you've said before I joined, apologies in advance. Grayling is an international integrated public relations and public affairs business. We've got 2 offices in Scotland, one in Glasgow, one in Edinburgh. But we are a global business with 50 offices around the world. We are heavily involved in the technology sector. We work with BT, with the Data Lab, with ScotlandIS, as you know, obviously, Practice Group. We work with startups and with major businesses, and we work across many sectors. My personal background is in reputation management, crisis management, brand building, that kind of space, and primarily I work in media rather than in marketing. So my perspective today is much more around how you protect, nurture, enhance your reputation in the kind of new normal, rather than looking at kind of marketing and sales, which is primarily where Ruth has come from today. So hopefully a slightly different perspective. I think though, before we look at what we should do now, I felt it was maybe worth looking at what communications were like before coronavirus came along. I've got a cheeky slide on that, which I was hoping to share, Heather. I will click share screen and see if that does the job. Hopefully this is coming up. So if I bung that up on full screen, hopefully you can see that. So Grayling produces every year a list of global communications trends which we feel are breaking through and becoming prevalent throughout communications world. And these were our 5 for 2020, which we launched in January before coronavirus was really an issue. Now, I don't know why it moved on then. I was a Guinness advert I was going to show you. I just wanted to briefly talk you through these because some of these will completely resonate with you now, even so, but hopefully it will remind you of what the world was like. So on the right at the top, you have the new transparency. This was a trend that we see increasingly, but we definitely saw in the year, in the last 12 months, where brands were relinquishing what we call polished perfection in favor of an authentic voice and integrity. So if things are a little bit rough around the edges, but we're being truthful and honest, that was being well received by audiences. That leads to, you know, kind of taking the customer behind the scenes a bit more, being a little bit more open about how you, what your supply chain looks like. If you're not perfect with your sustainability, but you're going on a journey, better to explain the bumps on the road than to try and present a kind of perfect picture. And you should all have your own versions of that, I'm sure. If we go kind of clockwise round, then the out-of-home mobile revolution was well and truly underway. Mobile campaigns using our devices to communicate with stakeholders and consumers absolutely is flying. This ranges from kind of low location activated content to the good old-fashioned barcode is still around, all sorts of things, QR codes, anything that you can get your hands on which drives people to a device is well worth doing. In fact, to give you one example of that, I was at the 2018 Ryder Cup in Paris, and we actually used geo-targeting to pinpoint messages to fans as they were coming to the golf course in order to send the messages about where to get the bus. So there are all sorts of examples of how you can use mobile devices to reach people outside their homes. The third trend is called Nudge for Good in that bottom right corner. This is where we're trying to turn some of the core values that you might have as an organization and get others to come on the journey with you. So you're trying to nudge people into action, into building habits, incentivizing them to do things for social and ethical benefit. This is because people are increasingly determined to do their bit for the environment, for society, and brands are picking up on that and you know, sort of trying to identify ways to bring people on their journey too. If you then look over to the bottom left, give and take, that's about brands having a certain confidence. So consumers are kind of getting a little wary of all the push, and actually they're happy for a little bit of pull. So if I want to kind of, you know, maybe ask a little more of you in order to get a reward, perhaps to do something specific or go somewhere specific, maybe a kind of a treasure hunt perhaps, I'm maybe willing to do that if the ultimate goal is something worthwhile, which sort of flies in the face a little bit of the idea that we have to, you know, work hard to push and get our message received. It's sort of saying if you've got a loyal audience somewhere, actually making them work a bit for your money might not be a bad shout. And finally, back to the future. So There's some cool stats out there about how if you had the choice of getting in a time machine and going forwards or backwards, more of us would actually go backwards than we would forwards, which is a weird idea if you think about it. So bridging the past, the present, and yes, the future, bringing in a bit of nostalgia, maybe even future gazing and looking at what the future might look like, but either way, building that bridge for your stakeholders is something that really resonates and can build a very emotional connection with people. I mean, a classic example of this is the Spotify adverts that came out in and around the kind of festive period, where all of a sudden all of our kind of, you know, playlists were being kind of aggregated into kind of your favorite song. There were sort of favorite songs from the 90s, from the 80s. Heather, you're nodding because you clearly are a Spotify fan. You know, this was all that just instant connection and you know, kind of drove a lot of conversation for Spotify. So that is a very brief whistle-stop tour of where we feel communications was going. And Ruth was talking a lot about purpose in the earlier part of her presentation, and you'll probably see the kind of common thread through a lot of this being purpose and meaning. I don't know why that keeps happening. That bloody Guinness advert is going to be the death of me. I will come on to the Guinness advert, but before I do, to answer the question what to do now, I think we have to remind ourselves of what's going on in society today. 500,000 people signing up to the NHS volunteer scheme, 1.5 million people at serious risk of death, sadly, if they contract coronavirus, tens of millions of people stuck in their homes, Parliament shut down, you know, brewers and vacuum cleaner makers changing production to make hand sanitizers, 16,000 people arrested in Peru for not following social distancing rules, nearly 1 million families and children doing exercise together via a live YouTube stream with Joe Wicks, me included. You know, strange things are happening all around us. But if you want to know how to protect and preserve your reputation, build it even and improve it, you need look no farther than the answers that are all around us every day. And I think that, you know, there are 3 things that we should all focus on, and I will take you through each of those in turn and shortly talk about the Guinness ad. The first of those is how 3 of these 5 trends are merging and morphing into one common purpose. So new transparency, nudge for good, back to the future, these are all morphing into a collective mission to support one another and remind each other of the strength of the human spirit. That is fundamentally what is happening in communications at the moment. Any brand or organization that trips up and doesn't quite get that right stands out like a sore thumb. I've certainly seen my fair share of examples already of businesses attempting to hook communications on coronavirus and sell a product. It's pretty obvious. It has to have that common goal at its heart at the moment, or you are not going to get any traction whatsoever. That is also true of government. If a lot of our clients are currently trying to get a line into the Treasury or to number 10 or to various kind of functions of government to do with business and the economy, technology, yes, included, banking, all sorts of things, retail. If you cannot immediately demonstrate how you're helping the government solve the coronavirus crisis, you might as well go home and come back in 6 months' time. That is the new reality. And that is because we are all bound by this common purpose to save lives and rid ourselves of this new horrendous disease. The role of social media is changing too in that respect. So it's shifting from promotion to support in many instances. So we've all got to think about how we can change our outlook to respond to that, from providing practical information to, frankly, alleviating the boredom of being in self-isolation. There are lots of different ways in which you will find a way to add value and to kind of connect with your audiences. I will now move on to that Guinness ad, because sometimes you can't really do much. Guinness is probably one of those where really they don't have a role to play in solving the coronavirus crisis, but they can still demonstrate a real kind of authentic voice. They can still say, we're in it together and we absolutely are behind the government in asking you to stay at home. And this is a very quickly turned around piece of advertising, which is on social too, I believe, that really easily helps us all understand that Guinness is with us, but is also, you know, kind of on that kind of collective mission to help the coronavirus crisis. It's also increasingly about championing the superhuman effort that individuals are going to kind of get us through this. I don't know if any of you have seen the Be More Tanya hashtag that went around a couple of days ago. Be More Tanya is all about a lady called Tanya who worked in a B&M retail store. I'll show you some of what Tanya did here. So Tanya basically went above and beyond with a customer in a B&M retail store who came along, had travelled for miles, had gone on public transport, no loo roll anywhere, elderly customer, and she went above and beyond the call of duty to get her the supplies that she needed, because she was caring for someone with bowel cancer at the same time. An incredibly heartwarming story. You can see some of the figures that are in these kind of social posts, 22,000 interactions and several thousand comments on LinkedIn, another 11,000 on Facebook, more on Twitter. It hit the national news. Our team did a little estimate for us on the kind of potential views of that Mirror piece, and we think it was at least 80,000 people likely to have viewed that one article. So the kind of reach of that one story and that one focus on that moment of Tanya and her human spirit was substantial indeed. Another thing to bear in mind is that anecdotally, we've seen the cost of social media advertising drop. We think by around 35% for Facebook and Instagram ads. That's due to a drop in global demand for social advertising. So it's not a bad time to boost your posts, to think about social media advertising, because you'll probably get a good deal while we're all taking a step back and considering how to get our brand right at this very difficult time. The second thing that I wanted to talk to you about, I might come off Tanya for a minute. I might go back to that first slide so you can kind of keep that as a kind of frame of reference. Otherwise, my ugly mug is going to fill your screen, and I don't think that's a good idea. So I'm going to kind of just leave that up there for now. There are, however, two other things that I wanted to bring up. One is timeframes. So timeframes have changed completely. There is no medium term anymore in reputation management, at least. There's definitely no long term. There is really only now the short term. If you have a long-term plan, we all had lovely 12-month PR programs and delightful strategies that took us through a journey of phase 1 to phase 3, and we could have neatly go from one quarter to the next, ticking our boxes and getting stuff done. I'm afraid they've lost that precious sort of relevance and value that they may have had in the past. You've got to get to grips with now. That is my number one message to you all, is if you don't yet have a really easy way to understand how you fit in to the foreseeable future, that is where I would spend my time. accept the limitations of time, accept the limitations of virtual working, accept not everything is going to be perfect, but have confidence in what that position is for your business, because that is what's going to see you through the coming months. We're doing this with all our clients, law firms, banks, technology companies, supermarkets, you name it. They all have to work it out, and it's not easy at all. But if you can get there, the confidence that it will bring you to then go out and communicate will be so much more powerful. To just return the compliment to Heather, I feel like ScotlandIS got their heads around this really, really fast, set up things like this super quickly, went out into the wider world, engaged with government, and kind of defended the position of the technology industry, and found ways to support those businesses extremely quickly. You know, that only comes from confidence in having worked out some of these things. So I think that's a fantastic case study for how it can work. And the third thing that I wanted to raise was that bloody ad, about how saturated traditional and social channels are at the moment. So yes, there are still opportunities, but we're seeing, I mean, at least 50% of every newspaper covered with coronavirus news. The other half, generally speaking, dedicated to human interest, softer stories, but even then, plenty of coronavirus related content. Broadcast news is dedicated to coronavirus almost all the time. And it is incredibly difficult to find a way to reach out to the mainstream media with a story to tell that isn't in that kind of broad ballpark. So bear that in mind. We had a conversation with the consumer editor of The Sun not long ago. He did a kind of a chat to the wider industry about what's going on at The Sun at the moment. Some of the kind of stuff that's worth sharing with you is around kind of how busy they all are, how journalists are massively struggling with the kind of working from home thing. As you can imagine, you know, it's not the kind of beast you want to kind of lock up and keep constrained. So they really are sort of struggling with bandwidth. That means they actually are placing a higher premium on PR content, because if it's good, it helps them. So to bear in mind, don't rule out a proactive approach, just bear in mind the limitations of space and time. Consumer trends are still interesting. So any research you might be doing, any market research you've put into the field, don't be put off talking about it. It depends on what it is, but certainly the message we were getting from journalists is that's still of interest. A lot of journalists are trying to keep their media a positive space. So if you imagine being the editor of the Times, your front page is a pretty bleak place at the moment, and necessarily so. That doesn't mean that literally every story has to follow that particular approach. So they are trying to get a balance so that readers are uplifted, heartened by the approach the media is taking to the crisis and sharing the good news stories where they can. And a word to what Ruth was talking about, there's definitely still a role for direct communications. If you think about all those limitations and challenges I just talked about, email communications to either customers or clients, wider stakeholders who already know you, is a really strong way of getting a message across about your organization. But think extremely carefully about how you do that, take on board some of Ruth's points, modify your email communications to reflect some of the tonal messages that Ruth made, because it absolutely reflects on your brand in the same way that it does if that customer read about it in a newspaper or heard about it on radio. Your owned channels are extremely important, and you must make sure your shop window reflects the wider world that we're all seeing now. So I'm going to stop there. I'm actually going to stop on the Guinness advert because it's been a bit of Achilles heel for me today. But I'm going to leave you with a couple of statistics. 73% of consumers are willing to pay more to support an honest and trustworthy brand. So transparency is key in that. You can't build trust if you're not honest with your customers. 80% of Instagram accounts follow a business. So more than 500 million people use Insta stories every day, and a third of the most viewed stories are from businesses. So don't forget social channels as a way to reach people, even if you're put off using the media for some of the reasons I've explained. And brands that are viewed as meaningful, those are the brands that make the world a better place, are outperforming the stock market by 134% at the last time we looked. So they are seeing commercial benefits, they're seeing their kind of share of wallet improve, they are seeing their share prices improve too. So if that's not a good reason to find purpose in your communications and root yourselves in kind of what society is currently facing, I don't know what is. Those are my three things, Heather. I hope that's helpful. Back to you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Billy. I very much appreciate it. I'm just going to stop you screen sharing. You've done it yourself. Wonderful, thanks. So we do have a few questions in so far. Let me start with this one for you, Billy, which is, so we're being asked that unless your business is part of the solution or the mission to eradicate the coronavirus, then you should maybe think about pausing your PR until after the virus. Is that kind of what you were trying to say?
I think if you can't find a confident place, I would pause choices about what you communicate until you have got that confidence. I don't think that I would give up that easily. I think we all have a role to play. Like right now is a great example of that. You could argue a public relations consultancy has no practical role to play in many respects until you think about it. But it's easy to think that, Heather. And I think if you're a technology business, it would be equally easy to struggle to find that answer. But part of your PR agency's role is to help you find those answers, because there are social trends developing all the time. There are people in need everywhere. There are communities that require support in business as much as in kind of social life. So I wouldn't give up in that challenge, but yes, don't rush it.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Billy. And I can say that Grayling, our PR agency, has been like our right hand for the last 10 days. They have been guiding me and helping me with our messaging. Team have done a fantastic job in pulling a lot together in a very, very short time frame, but certainly everybody wouldn't have heard our message as well without the help. So I would encourage you all to, do as Billy says, find out what it is that you have to offer that's good and that can help your message and amplify it, and certainly use your channels, because our message is getting out there and people are responding to it. I know quite a lot of you guys that are on here today have been part of the Tech Hub, for instance, and giving out your offers, which has been picked up all over the place, which we're so thankful for. I do have more questions. John is asking, and this is probably for both of you, do either of you have any advice on launching an online events product in the current climate? And what kind of, probably more for you, Ruth, marketing tools would you recommend as part of your media mix?
I think the first thing I would say, John, is you'd want to be really, really clear as to have a clear message about what your product is offering and where it's differentiating itself in the marketplace. I think is really important. So that would be the first thing, is very clear message of where your product is different and where it sits in the market. I would also say that thinking about your target market, if it's business to business that you're looking to target, I would recommend LinkedIn and YouTube, for example. Or if it's one more for consumer market, then Facebook would be a good place to start as well. But I mean, arguably a great time to be launching that product, but just be really clear, because in fact, Heather and I were having a conversation about this yesterday, because you've got your Facebook Live, you can use Zoom, which loads of us are doing, Skype, and I think each of them sit in a slightly different place for us, or we have a certain preference to them. So I think just being really, really focused on the benefit and purpose and why I would use your platform rather than some of the other ones that are out there and available.
Perfect. Billy, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I echo what Ruth says. I think that for me, being a bit more brutal about it, I would want to know what the niche is. I mean, it feels to me like there are some very well established online platforms for holding virtual events where, you know, the kind of by far the larger proportion of people will naturally turn and are in fact already using. So harder to answer that question without knowing what it is that makes that particular event unique. But if we can get that information, then happy to chat a bit more about it.
Definitely. So John, if you want to drop me a message, I can certainly put you in touch with Billy, and you can hook up on LinkedIn and maybe you can ask some advice there. I have another question, this one definitely for you, Ruth, from Susie. So she has tried LinkedIn advertising in mail, and it was very difficult to navigate the platform, understanding the invoicing, and you don't really know who your email is going to go to, only that there were business founders, for example. They didn't spend a particular amount of money on it, but it was very time consuming and brought no positive leads. Is there a better way of using LinkedIn? Billy, I reckon you might also be able to answer this, or you'll tell me no, only because I know your team do some great work on LinkedIn as well.
The answer is yes, there is a much more effective way of doing it. The other thing I would agree with is I found LinkedIn, navigating it as an advertising platform, ridiculously hard. Thankfully, I have other people that do that, but I spent a stupid amount of time looking for the right button or where the information was. So I'm completely with you. It's not the easiest platform or the most intuitive one in terms of setting up advertising. I wouldn't personally recommend InMail, particularly because you'll see it yourself when you have a sponsored InMail, it says that and people know it's advertising. So I think you're much less likely to get engagement with that. What I would recommend is, referring to that second strategy I went through around content, is to come up with a really strong piece of content that you can then advertise on LinkedIn and use that, if you like, as your magnet for drawing people. So it has to be something of value and use to your audience in order for it to capture them. And then if people are downloading that, then you've got a good idea that that is something that they're interested in. And the second thing I would say is to have a strategy behind your advertising. And by that, I mean, don't just stick out an advert, even if it's advertising your content. Don't just throw that out there. What you need to think about is, if they download that guide or content, what's the nurture email sequence behind that? Where does that person's information get captured? How do you keep in touch with them? How can you engage with them on other platforms? And essentially the goal from that is, how do you just start that initial conversation?
Perfect. Thanks, Ruth. Billy, have you got anything to add to
that? Well, we don't use InMail in that way, but I mean, the only thing I could add to that is that just right now, we've certainly taken a decision as a business to not reach out to people we don't know. That's just a sort of choice we've made. It's only temporary, and it is designed to reflect the fact that we acknowledge that people have got sort of completely different priorities at the moment. That doesn't stop us talking to people who we do know, and even if we don't know them very well, we've got some sort of relationship intact. It's slightly easier to use LinkedIn to kind of create, in fact, you know, virtual coffees. We're doing a few of those just as ways to kind of, you know, we might have normally met in a Starbucks somewhere to kind of chew the fat, and now we're, you know, that seems to be gathering some pace. But no, nothing further to add.
Brilliant, thank you. Just to update you, John's question about the online event product.
Oh, yeah.
So John is saying that it's an online charity FIFA tournament that he is looking to do, and it's free to attend. So I take it, John, that this will be like an event rather than the event platform.
I had one of these, Heather, the other day. Well, I got invited to a pub quiz, a virtual pub quiz to raise money for charity, and so there's one really clear point here. Massive desire to attend the pub quiz. It was £3 to go. Lovely charity. We were all happy to do that. We got nothing, you know, it was on a Saturday. Why not? You know, half an hour. Really unclear mechanism to join. So we have been put off because I have to go and try and explain it to my virtual team individually how to do it, and I can't be bothered. So if you, just from my personal experience, literally of last night, if you want to do that, absolutely spell it out. Am I going to see other people in the tournament or not? Am I using my own kind of mechanism to kind of just virtually see my teammates? What does it actually look like, and spell it out? Otherwise, you won't get anyone.
Brilliant. Take it you've not got anything to add to that, Ruth?
I think a fantastic point, well made. Absolutely true. I would say as well, if that, John, that your platform there is probably going to be Facebook then. YouTube advertising could work really nice, or just put a video up on YouTube. And as Billy was saying, though, just when you're doing that advertising or marketing piece, is just be really clear, as Billy was saying, about what it looks like, how it works, how the charity benefits, that kind of thing, because that's the information people will be making a judgment on in the first place. But yeah, I go Facebook and YouTube with that, but it sounds like something, given the complete lack of sport and sport entertainment and football that's going on, that could really take off just now, with a great purpose behind it as well.
Perfect. Right, well, thank you everybody for coming. We definitely really appreciate it, and thank you all again for all of your questions. Sorry, I'm just putting this holding slide up if I can find the button. We have several other events coming up, which include what we've got. We've got Cyber tomorrow, so that's all about making sure that you are as resilient as you can be within your practices, your cyber practices, whilst working at home. We know that it's a big problem for many, many people. So we have some experts. We've got Dave Stubley from 7 Elements. We have Ian McGowan from Barrier Networks, and we have the lovely Fedi from Quorum Cyber. Next week, we've got a mental health whilst working at home session. I think, can somebody jump on chat and tell me, is it my screen that you're seeing, or are you currently seeing an image of the lovely Ruth? Because I think that might be what you see. If so, apologies. Everybody's coming on chat to tell me now. Fab, you're all seeing my screen. That's good. Thank you. So we've got that one tomorrow. Then we've got the mental health in the workplace, which is now obviously home working. So how to save your sanity whilst you're working at home. We've got a mental health first aider in Scott Newby, and we also have Stu Hurst, who is a huge advocate for saving your mental health at work. He's got a great story to tell, so hopefully you'll all enjoy that. On Wednesday, we have Going Viral After the Virus, which is the lovely Theo Priestley that will be delivering it. He is a product guru and futurist. I'm sure many of you will know him. And on Thursday, we have a leadership session with our Michael Anderson, who has come through 2 recessions while still building multi-million-pound businesses. What one we've not advertised yet, and I only had confirmed yesterday, is that the lovely Richard Marshall, who always runs our Tech Trends events for us, is going to come and look at tech trends post COVID-19. So remote technologies, how it's changed, if they have, from the start of the year, and where to focus your energies. So I will end by thanking both of our panelists so very much. Ruth, you were fantastic. Billy, you too. And say to you all, if you want to get in touch, the website is on the screen. My email, I think you all definitely have that. And I will get this video out to you later on today. Thank you for coming.